Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to share with you Reveal Math for grade 6 all the way up through Algebra 2. This is for our 2020 copyright. So it's a little different than the 2025 copyright at the middle school level. But this is a wonderful program that has just really got some amazing resources to help all of our students learn mathematics all the way across. So it's a program that was built to reveal the curiosity, the understanding, and really the possibilities that are limitless with this program in terms of what the students can learn, see, experience, do, just really great parts that are built within the program itself. So it is a program that works on any web-enabled device. So if the students can access the internet, it will work on those devices. So this even extends to things like Xboxes and PlayStations and computers and phones and tablets and all of those types of things. So it really allows unlimited access for the students. And it does, all of our platforms and our books and all of those things do work hand in hand with Google Translate. So I know that a lot of times we have things that are in English and Spanish, and people always ask me, well, what about the other languages? So in that case, we know that Google Translate supports a lot of different languages. And from what I've heard, most of the translations are very, really quite well received by the students. There is also an app that is our K-12 portal app, and this allows students to download the book onto any app-enabled device. So it allows them to access the content even when they're offline. So whether they're on a Chromebook, an iPad, or tablet, any of those types of things, it will allow them to access their content on those devices. So the main thing you need to know here is the Reveal Math structure. We call them modules. Some people think of chapters or units. We call them modules because of the fact that if you needed to, you could change the order of instruction of those modules. So it's a question that we get asked quite often. Could I move this particular module up? And most cases, the answer is yes. You got to kind of be a little careful with some of the spiral reviews, but we call them modules. And within those modules are a series of lessons. So you're going to see several lessons that make up those particular modules that are built into there. So when we're kicking off one of the modules itself, you're going to see that all of the modules start with a module video. So this is something to help answer that age-old question, why do we have to learn this? Who uses this kind of information? So they're really wonderful module videos that are there. And then the units will also start off with an Ignite activity. And the intent of an Ignite activity is to use kind of a fun scenario with the students where we can kind of ask them questions and have a little bit of fun with the content. So what you'll see is that those module videos always focus around the essential question for the module. So it's a great way to kind of kick off the module. And then at the very end, we also come back to the essential question and make sure that students do understand things like what can a function tell you about the relationship that it represents. So a really great resource that's there. But those Ignite activities, these are, we call them low floor and high ceiling kinds of activities. And so this is an example from 7th grade where it's operations with integers. So before we even talk about any of the rules for operations with integers, we're just presenting students with a wonderful kind of activity that they can look at. And in this case, Yolanda and Harrison are playing a board game. The cards shown are the cards that Harrison has drawn, and he can't believe that he is still so far behind. So in a classroom, or if I was with all of you in a room, I would say take just a moment and think about things that you notice or things that you wonder about what you see on the screen. So in general, some students will say, I noticed that Harrison is a lion. That's a perfect response because there is no right or wrong answer to what people notice or what they wonder. But what I will point out to you here is those 6 cards, when students are trying to figure out how Harrison got to this point, they're already doing a lot of math with those operations with integers. So without even being formally introduced to adding and subtracting integers, they're relying on something that many students have played games as they've grown up that ask them to do these kinds of things. And in your teacher's guides, you're going to see that good questions you can ask your students are things like, does the order in which these cards are played, does it matter? Which order do you think it was played in? What's the most important card in this entire deck? So how can we get to different parts of this? And all of the Ignite activities are really phenomenal. If you teach Algebra 1, my most favorite one is actually in the unit on polynomials. I believe it's module 10. And that is just a really great one that kind of gets some chuckles going, but it shows some real life scenarios of utilizing polynomials when reading blueprints. So if you teach Algebra 1, be sure to write down Ignite activity, module 10 on polynomials. It's a really fantastic one that is there. So the lessons themselves, so the modules are comprised of several lessons, but then within the lessons themselves, there are a variety of resources. Now, as this entire screen will unfold in a couple of minutes, know that all of these little rectangles are in a pre-made lesson presentation. And you have a backup PowerPoint presentation that incorporates these resources as well. So every one of our lessons is going to open up with a warm-up. Think of a bell ringer, a 5-minute check, something like that that you would do with your students, focusing on some prerequisite skills. Then there will be some sort of way to launch that lesson. It could be with an infographic or an image that we're asking students to kind of relate to. And then I want you to see that this is, I call this step 3 in the lesson model, but built into every lesson is a review of prerequisite skills. So if your students are weak in some prerequisite skills, you have this step. So I always say, remember step 3, and I'll come back to it when we go into the digital experience, because this can become an invaluable resource for our students in the classroom. Then we move into the actual lessons themselves. So most lessons are going to start with or incorporate somewhere close to the beginning, some sort of explore activity. Then we'll solidify the understanding of what they did as they tinkered with the mathematics. We'll solidify that in the learn phase. Then we'll move into, there are several examples that accompany each one of the lessons, and there is a little check step that goes along with those. And then for every example in the student edition, there is also an extra example. And this is a teacher favorite resource for sure, because the extra examples oftentimes include tutorial videos or hints and explanations that help unlock the content for students. Very helpful, especially if they happen to be absent from the day that you were teaching your fantastic lesson. We know that a lot of teachers rely on the extra examples to help students get caught up. And I'll show you those as we go online. But this process may repeat itself several times throughout the individual lesson. And when we talk about building those explore activities, oftentimes you're going to see it's using simulations. So in this particular simulation, the students are just told to rotate the line and observe what is happening to this number that's right here. So before we even get into the formal definition of slope, or starting to talk about y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, before we get into that, we're just asking kids to notice what type of line or what type of value this has, depending on the upward slope or downward steepness of one of those lines. So it's a great tool to help with those using simulations. And then I also want to point out another teacher favorite is in the margins of the student editions. You're going to see these little prompts that say things like think about it or talk about it. And now that we are trying to really infuse more mathematical discourse and collaborative conversations in the classroom, these are fantastic ways to integrate that into the class. And look at this question. If the point 1, 3 is on the line, what other point could be on the line to make the slope positive? Negative, 0, or undefined? And if you think about this, this is a very open-ended question with multiple correct answers. So think about the types of conversations that you could have in the classroom with the students, and maybe you have this group find three examples of a point that could be on there to make this look positive. These kids look at negative. These kids look at 0. These kids look at undefined. So before we even really start to formalize any of that, they get an opportunity to tinker with the mathematics, which is really going to help solidify that understanding as they go through. But you'll see that the focus of Reveal Math is really in on some mathematical modeling. We want students to be able to, again, tinker with the mathematics and have those aha moments in terms of what those understandings are. So you're going to see that we've built many of these simulations in Web Sketchpad. There are also some Desmos interactives that show up in there sometimes. But then we also back up that mathematical modeling with some concept videos that show where it's used in the real world. And your students and you always have access to the e-toolkit. You'll see this little icon shows up on the student edition pages, on the lesson presentation pages, within some of the lessons. But it's a great way to be able to bring in those manipulatives that you might have hands-on version in your classroom, or you might just rely on the digital version, but those are built into the experience for both the teachers and the students. So again, this process may repeat itself several times as we go through with those examples, and then every lesson will end with an exit ticket. And when I talk about those lessons, sometimes those lessons are built to be, I'm going to call them single day lessons. When we talk about a single day, I mean about 45 minutes in time. Many of the lessons are also, they might be listed as a 2-day lesson, meaning that it would take 2 45-minute sessions, or if you're on a block schedule, then it would only take 1. So we generally let you know that these lessons could be either 45 minutes, 90 minutes, and yes, there are some at the high school level that are actually 135 minutes. So you have 3 days of instruction to really dig into the understanding, and that's where a lot of these explore activities and these examples really kind of come into play. But at the end of those 1, 2, or 3 days of those lessons, you're going to have an exit ticket. In addition to the exit ticket, at some point in time within each one of the modules, you're going to see a formative assessment math probe. These are built to uncover overgeneralizations and misconceptions that our students have. So notice in this one, it's still continuing on from that 7th grade operations with integers. And notice here it says without actually calculating. So I don't want you to get a calculator. I don't want a number. I want to know, as we work through this, will each of these responses result in a positive answer, or would that answer end up being negative? So we're bringing in all of the different orders, operations with integers, and we're asking students to think about the reasonableness of the answer. Is it going to be positive? And I know when I was teaching, I used to tell students, you can't always trust the calculator because you might have hit an incorrect button somewhere, and you have to always think, what should the sign of my answer be before you even do any of those calculations? So this is a great tool in order to do that. And you'll see how to incorporate these formative assessment math probes by looking in your teacher's edition. You'll see this page, and it will let you know, in this case, this is a probe that you can assign after lesson 4. So it means any time after you've completed lesson 4, it is an appropriate time to incorporate this formative assessment math probe. If you need to wait until after lesson 5 or after lesson 6, that is fine as well. But we just want to uncover any of those overgeneralizations that our students have. Notice from a teacher standpoint, it lets you know what to do. If the students are getting them incorrect, here is the possible reason why they might be making that mistake. And as we analyze the probe and collect that student work, we are given in our teacher's edition some resources that we can use to take action. And sometimes it's going to refer back to an example that the students have done. But those are some really great things to really kind of look at that formative assessment from a different lens. Then we have some built-in intervention. This is an invaluable tool for teachers across the world. So a Take Another Look mini lesson. There are about 100 of these in each course up through Algebra 1. And if you teach geometry or Algebra 2, you do also have access to what's called the Quick Review Math Handbook. So you don't have the Take Another Look mini lessons, but you do have the Quick Review Math Handbook. So I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. But these 15-minute built-in intervention lessons, these Take Another Look mini lessons, incorporate additional modeling in the sense of there might be a video kind of instruction, tutorial, something like that, but we'll model the instruction. We'll give the students an opportunity to do some interactive practice. And if we assign this to our students to do, the very last part of this incorporates a data check. And that data check will report data directly back to you. So you know whether the students now have an understanding of that or whether they do not. So again, they take about 15 minutes. They're built for a student to do on their own. And again, there's about 100 of them per course through Algebra 1. I also tell teachers, if you are a new teacher and you've never taught the content before that you are working in, these are a great tool for you to use for some built-in professional development, because you could watch this and you could hear what is being said, and it might help you as you are instructing that lesson in terms of just kind of building your own practice as well. So if you teach 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, or Algebra 1, you're going to have access to, you and your students will have access to these Take Another Look mini lessons. If you teach Algebra 1, Geometry, or Algebra 2, your students have access to what's called the Quick Review Math Handbook. This is going to provide some additional reteaching. It's going to focus in on some examples that are here and some immediate exercises that they can kind of practice that with. These Quick Review Math Handbooks have often been called the Cliff's Notes of math because they do focus in on the skills that students need to gain that understanding. So this is definitely a teacher and student favorite resource as well. And then once we know that students are ready for the homework, then we can actually use our practice resources and assign things to our students. So you have the option of using the homework questions that are inside the book. And at the middle school level, you're going to see it's got this little teal stripe down the side of it. At the middle school level, there are 2 pages of homework practice built into the book. For our high school courses, there are up to 4 pages. So most of them have actually 4 pages because, again, many of those lessons might spread out over a 2-day period. But the intent of those is to bring in the mathematical practices, and students can, of course, do this paper pencil, but they can also complete their homework assignment online, and you can choose if you want to give them some instant feedback. So what's really nice about that is, so back when I was teaching in the classroom, I always assigned the odd problems because then the students could look for the answers in the back of the book and they would have some instant feedback on whether they got the questions right or wrong. In a perfect world, they would then go and take any questions that they missed and rework them to try to get to the correct answer. But what we found is our students are a little bit more savvy than that. So a lot of students were erasing the incorrect answer, writing in the correct answer. And so they'd have all the wrong work, but they'd have the correct answer. And so at that point, we realized that, a lot of students feel like the intent of homework is to always get the correct answer the first time. And what we want students to realize, and what we can do in our digital experience, is we can allow students to make a mistake, tell them that they made a mistake, and then give them an opportunity to correct that mistake. So I always like to tell people the acronym MATH, M-A-T-H, is mistakes allow thinking to happen. And so I would tell my students, if you get every question correct the first time you do it, that means you probably didn't learn that content from me. You actually knew that content beforehand. So we learn when we make mistakes. And so that is a wonderful tool to be able to do in our digital experience. And I'm going to actually show you some of the new things that we have in our digital experience. So if this is kind of a refresher for you, you'll get some new kind of tips and tricks that you can utilize with our lesson practice and even with our assessments as well. So for practice itself, you're going to see that there is what we call dynamic module practice. This is a whole series of algorithmic homework questions it's kind of like a chapter review or a module review of all of the lessons, and the questions are different for every student in the classroom. And I'm going to show you something that we've just added that I think you will really appreciate as we move into assessments with our students. But what I want you to know is our practice item bank reflects all of the questions that are in the student edition. Then we've taken that practice item bank and we've created subsets. So the easiest way I can say is that the subset that's called practice, think about that's the even problems. The reinforce, those are the odd problems, and reason and apply are the mixed review questions. Now, practice and reinforce incorporate a couple of these reason and apply, and they may or may not be the odds and evens at that point. But that's just kind of in general what these are. These are just subsets of that practice item bank. Now, that extra practice is where there used to be some algorithmic questions, and we've actually pulled them out into an easier experience for you, and I'll show you what that looks like. But if you create a custom homework assignment, if you said, Shelley, I would like to have number 4, number 6, number 17, and then 22 to 23, you can create those and you can actually print out a homework assignment. But everything that we give to you is fully customizable. You can pull the exact questions that you want, but if you give your students their assignments to do online, you can give them those multiple attempts that let them make mistakes. You can turn on things like hints and explanations. You can incorporate algorithmic questions, meaning that every student in the class has the same type of question with different numbers and variables and scenarios. This has become very popular in this day and age because a lot of students spend a lot of time just looking for the answers online as opposed to actually working through the problems. But our courses have literally thousands of questions per course, and it really lets you kind of customize that exactly the way that you want. So I'm going to show you a student experience with some of the new types of questions because I think that this will be something you'll kind of think, wow, I want to be able to incorporate those. And what I'm about to show you, you can absolutely do with your students. So I'm in the teacher dashboard experience right now. And I'm going to go to right here where it says roster. And I am going to actually emulate one of my students. So I can go in and I can go to these little 3 dots. Anytime you see 3 dots, be sure to click on it because there's something really neat that you can do there. But I am going to emulate this student. So now I actually am this student in my particular classroom, and you're going to see that there is an assignment that I created for the students to do. And I want to show you how powerful these assignments can be. So the book problems are wonderful, but could the students probably find the answers online? Unfortunately, yes, but I like to incorporate a couple of different types of questions. So with this assignment that I have created for the students, I can choose to incorporate, I can give them a simple, a scientific, or a graphing calculator if I choose. I can turn on things like text to speech so they can hear the questions read. I can incorporate a reference sheet. I can scramble the question. So lots of different things that you can do in terms of the directions. but I want you to see some of these amazing types of questions that we can provide for our students. And I apologize, my internet's been a little kind of crazy today, but here is an example of one of our drag and drop kinds of questions. So in this case, we're being asked to factor the polynomial and drag the expressions into there. So I am going to intentionally miss this question, so don't judge me too harshly, but I am going to come in here and I am going to intentionally miss this question and I am going to check my answer. So this is where I said, as a teacher, I was able to turn on the ability for students to see that they made a mistake. Also here, what you'll notice is that some of our questions have built-in hints, so they can see the hint, and some of the questions have built-in tutorial videos. So this is where students can actually watch a tutorial video of how to do a question that is similar to the one that they're presented with, but it is a little bit different. So this is Mr. Hardesty, and he's going to walk them through exactly how to do a problem that is similar to it. And again, my internet's being a little slow on me here, but it will actually walk them through, and there is audio that goes along with it in terms of them being able to see that. If you like the idea of incorporating questions that have hints and these explanations, I saw that thumbs up. I think so too. If you like that idea, these questions are found in our extra practice bank of questions. So if you like the idea of these questions, you want to find these in our extra practice bank. But I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I get this question correct. So I'll come down here and I know that this answer is a plus 8 times the quantity a plus 7. Again, it doesn't matter what order they put that into there. And notice I got the correct points. So it doesn't matter if they miss it the first time, as long as they're able to get it right within those 3 tries that we give them. And I like to say that this takes the fun out of photomath, because we know a lot of students use photomath and different apps that are there, but we want kids to realize it's okay to make a mistake. Use it as a learning experience. As I move to the next question, this is one that is pulled from our algorithmic bank of questions. So what's unique about this one is that for every single student in the class, they have the same parallel type of question, but they all have a different question. And I can tell it's algorithmic. See this little icon right here? That's what lets me know. So now, even if the students on the prior question maybe were assisting each other with their homework, for this question, every single student has a different question. What's unique about these questions is that kids can, if they just don't even know where to start, they can come in and they can say, I need help with this question. And yes, there is a button that says show answer. Oh my goodness. So they can do a step-by-step interactive walkthrough, or they can see a full worked out step-by-step solution. Now, I know I would like my students to do the step-by-step. I know that especially kids today, they just want to see the quick answer. So they can get an explanation, and it shows them an explanation to the exact question that they were presented with. It walks them through exactly how to do the exact question they were given. But when they go back to the question, it says, you currently have 0 points, but all is not lost. Improve your score and try another. So it algorithmically generates another question for that student. So here is another question parallel to the first one that they had, different than the ones that their peers had. And yes, as a teacher, you will see how many questions the students were presented with before they were able to get this. So when we come into this particular question, I'm going to make a classic mistake that students make, and I'm going to come into here and I'm going to say, let's see if I want to come in and check my answer. If I use like the wrong variable, it will tell me that I've used the wrong particular variable that's inside there, but it lets me go in and answer that particular question. So I'm going to say that this is W plus 7 times the quantity I got to do this right in front of everybody. If I don't want to put X, I'm going to do W plus 5. And notice I put that, I kind of didn't close my parentheses inside there, but notice it says you need to like make those adjustments. So it's going to coach the students into those correct answers, because the goal is we want students to get things correct whenever possible. So again, even with these questions, they could miss it, try again, get a full explanation, get a new question, lots of different things that we can do with that. We're going to move to the next question. And I want you to see that there are even abilities to put in drawing type questions. So if your students maybe have a tablet and they have a stylus and they're writing on that, or if they're really good with writing with a wireless mouse, you can actually have them show their work to this. So again, here's one where they would not necessarily, they're all going to have the same question, but they're not going to all be able to put the same kind of example there. They're going to have to be able to maybe show their work, show the check step, however you want to do that. Please don't judge my handwriting too harshly because I am writing with a wireless mouse. These questions don't have the gradability. We can't grade them, but you will see what the students wrote. And look at this. You could even incorporate audio response questions. So let's say that they were all copying Laura's homework, but now, or they were calling her for advice. Now look at this. The students have to explain in their own voice how they would factor that particular expression. So lots of possibilities. It's just kind of limitless in terms of what you can do. You can give students between 5 seconds and 2 minutes to do the explanations. So I wouldn't overuse the audio response, but it's a great place if there's something that students could get used to, having that kind of dialogue that's there. They can actually record their response to that particular question. It's going to record and then they just hit stop and it uploads. And yes, you hear those student responses as they are going through. And then the last one that I'll show you that is always a teacher favorite is where students can take a picture of their work and they can upload it. And yes, you can see exactly what they uploaded. So this is my little abbreviation for no work equals no credit. And they can choose their file. So I'm going to come into here, and I know that I have one that is called somewhere in here. I have one that is called student work. You scroll, I got a whole bunch of stuff on my desktop, but I wanted you to see what this looks like live. So when I go in, look at that student work, it's fantastic. And then I can click done and review as a student, and then they simply submit their assignment. So in the background, McGraw Hill has graded what it can, and then it has made it possible for you to see the scores of the students. Now, if you have used Reveal in the past, while we're here, I want to show you one of the new updates that we had this summer, and that is that within the roster, you can now go into the 3 dots for any of your students, and you can edit the students and you can turn on some IEP settings for them. So if you have a student who has an IEP or an individual instruction plan, educational plan that says that they always get a calculator, you can go in and you can turn on the ability for them to always have a calculator. By default in our lessons, the calculator is off, but you can always turn it on for the whole class, or you can leave it off. But if you have a student who definitely has to have it all the time, or that always has to have access to text to speech, even when you forget to turn it on for the whole class, this will turn on those features for the students who need it. So that's a new feature that got released this summer and has been very helpful for teachers. And then the other thing that I'll show you is this. When I go to my assignments tab that's here on the side, I can see this quick check. So you can see that there's something that I need to grade, and I can go in and look at this particular quick check, and I see the date and timestamp. And yes, I'm in Central Time in the United States right now. I'm actually in Nashville, Tennessee today. But I can see the date and timestamp, and it reflects where you are, wherever the students were doing that. So I can see and I can view the student score sheet. And when I take a look at this, I can see everything that McGraw Hill was able to grade, and I have the ability to make those changes as well. So when I look at this first question, I can see that they had unlimited opportunities to be able to do this. They only needed that one question to do it. But here was that algorithmic question. And remember, I missed the first one, and then I got it right the second time. Right here, look, it tells you this was the second question the student was offered. Here was the first question that the student was offered. So you will know whether or not it took the student multiple additional examples to be able to see it. If I go to question number 3, that's my drawing question. So of course that's fabulous work that's there. So I'm going to give 15 points that go along with that, and that's going to update on the student side immediately. When I go to question number 4, I can hear the audio response to that particular question. It's going to so, oops, so that's a perfect response as well, or maybe it wasn't as perfect, and I'm going to give myself 13 of those 15 points. Maybe they were missing. So you'll see it updates immediately. And then even when I look at question number 5, I can see the upload copy of the student work. So I can see exactly what the student did. And of course, that's worth a good 25 points that go along with it. So it gives you that flexibility of being able to update things in real time. Now, if you want to see just the student work, maybe all of the other questions were gradable and you just wanted to see the student work, if you're on question 5, you simply hit this little arrow and it will take you to the next student and the next student and the next student, staying on question 5. So it makes it really easy for you to be able to grade any of the work that the students have had. So that's kind of the easy, quick and easy way to be able to do that, the grading of those, or to maybe grade the audio response of all of them. So you would just hear those. And I saw the heart, and I think this is just a phenomenal way to really take homework to the next level for our students to really support them. One other thing that I want to show you is sometimes teachers have said, you know what, I don't want to do a digital homework assignment, or I don't want to, or they did something that was paper pencil, and is there still a way to get the scores uploaded into the system? And there is. This is something that more of our elementary schools do, but sometimes our high schools and middle schools want to do this as well. And I want to point out that if you go right here where these little 3 dots are, and you click on those 3 dots, you can create a class score sheet. So this opens up just a CSV file or just a template. And with this, it allows you to input the number of points each student got on those scores. So whether they got 5 points, 15 points, whatever those are. And then you're going to save that to your desktop. It tells you exactly how to do that. And then you can actually upload those scores into our system. So it's definitely kind of a new, it's been there for a while, but a lot of teachers have not used it in the past. But it is kind of a helpful tool that shows up. The other thing is, and I'm going to show you how to make an assignment to your students and bring in those questions that I think are really phenomenal. But one of the things that I hear from teachers a lot of times is, I gave the students an assignment and it closed out, but I need the students to be able to access that content. So you can always, if I'm looking at any particular assignment, I can go in and open up, oops, this one that's closed. I can go to, if I just need one student to have an extra attempt, I can give an extension or I can add an attempt to that. So I'm reopening the assignment for that student. Maybe they were absent and it closed before they could get to it, or maybe I'm excusing them from the complete assignment. Or if I need to reopen an assignment for all of the students in the class, I simply go to the 3 dots and I reopen that for all of the students. So those are some questions that we oftentimes get from teachers is, oh, the assignment closed before I could get to it. Do I have to delete it and reassign it? And the answer is no. You simply open the assignment, you go to the three dots, and you can reopen that for all of the students. So we're giving them an extra attempt at being able to do that. All right. The other thing that I want to show you before I get to talking about assignments is I want to talk about what you see in your digital experience. So this little button right here, I'm going to call this kind of the magic button. This is where you can browse the course, and whatever module it is that you are getting ready to teach, you can click on that module and you can see if I click on this, these are like digital file folders. If I click on this, it opens up the resources that support the module. If I open up one of these, it opens up the lessons that support that particular lesson. So I told you one of my favorite things is in Algebra 1, my module on polynomials, and it's the Ignite activity. And I open that up by clicking into the first file folder that is the unit level resources, and that Ignite activity is right here. And I'm just going to pop this up and preview it and let you kind of see what's here. I never thought that you could do so much with some polynomials, but this one is just kind of a fun activity. It's talking about this is the blueprint for my home, and your students will come up with, because you're just asking what do you notice and what questions can you ask. There will be a lot of giggling when students do this because they will quickly notice there's no bathroom, or that this is the teeny tiniest closet in the history of closets. It's a 1 yard by 1 yard closet, and there's only one closet for the bedrooms. Kids will ask things like, where are the doors? Where are the windows? How do I get in the house? So lots of different ways, but I want you to notice this. They can actually calculate the square footage of this by just knowing that this is a 1 yard by 1 yard closet in the center. So a lot of things come in with polynomials. They might name this side X for the length of the bedroom, and so that this little part that's here is kind of that X minus 1. Lots of different ways to solve this. It is a truly phenomenal activity. I really like the fixer-upper kind of one that's there. But you just simply click to browse the course, and you can go to any lesson, and you can go to any one of those units that are, or modules that are there. So one thing I want to point out to you, and I want everybody to notice this, there is a presentation that is pre-built. So every lesson already has an automatic presentation that's built. In fact, you should be able to go in, click the button that says present, and you should be able to teach directly from this lesson presentation. So here's my warm-up, my lesson launch, my explore activity. So this is that slope investigation. I'm going to turn off the teacher notes on this, but there's that slope investigation. And yes, your students have access to this same exact presentation. So one of the things I told you that teachers really like is the extra examples and the extra practice. And that's because I want you to see when students, this is the exact example that's inside their book, the exact same thing. And if you're at the middle school level, a lot of times you'll see that it'll say like 1 of 9 or 1 of 4 or 1 of 7. That's because it takes that example and kind of walks it out. So this changes the resource. This changes the pages or the slides within that resource. But I want to show you the extra example, because if you ever have students who are absent, I'll go ahead and reset my resources here. If you ever have students who are absent, this is similar to what's in their book, but it's not the same exact one. And many of these have, see where need help is? Those tutorial videos that accompany those extra practice questions also accompany the extra example videos that are here. So again, here's Mr.
Hi, this is Mr. Rutherford.
And he's going to walk them through how to solve a problem that's similar to this. So here we're talking about that rate of change. They can see, they can hear Mr. Rutherford walking them through all of that. And then they have a problem that they can try on their own. So these presentations are driven completely by you and your decisions. So this presentation is something that the kids have to be online, or you would have to be online to be able to do. But I want you to see that underneath the launch button, the first thing you're going to see is there is a fully editable, downloadable PowerPoint presentation for every single one of the lessons. This is here in case your internet is not working for you that day. You wouldn't want to put it into this presentation because you don't need a presentation inside a presentation. But this has a great download button that's right here. So my suggestion to teachers is always whatever module you're moving into, go in and download those PowerPoint presentations so you have them as a backup. Then you move into the rest of the lesson. So here's the warm up, here's the lesson launch. Maybe you said, Shelley, I don't want to do the lesson launch. You take it right out of the presentation. It's that easy to customize that. Or maybe you're looking at the explore and develop and you said, you know what, I really like example 1. We're not doing example 2. You can take it out. Or we're doing example 2, but I don't want to do the extra example 2. I don't want to have the tutorial. Don't know why anyone would ever say that. But you can fully customize your presentation by simply clicking on those important pieces. Underneath reflect and practice, here you can find that every lesson has that exit ticket. And then here are things that talk about the practice and the extra practice. And I just want to point out to you that, in my opinion, you should not click the word assign from here because you kind of lose the capability of giving students the extra attempts at the problem and being able to turn on the student settings. So in a perfect world, this button wouldn't even exist right here, but it is there. But I'll show you where it'll be easier to build an assignment from. This is invaluable for teachers, especially if you're teaching maybe Algebra 2 or geometry where you have questions that have a lot of steps to them. eSolutions will provide a fully worked out step-by-step solution to every problem. Notice this is a teacher-only resource, so it can't just mistakenly be given to the students. There are my tutorials, and I'm going to scoot past this and show you underneath additional resources. This is our language development handbook. There are graphic organizers that help students unlock the vocabulary. If you teach geometry, they are absolutely phenomenal. They're really good for all the courses, but as a former geometry teacher, I really, really like the language development handbook pages. But if you remember, when we very first started this presentation, I said, remember step 3, the review step that's there. So these review learns and review examples address prerequisite skills. So you can choose to put those into the presentation if you want. The same thing with the quick review math handbook or those take another look mini lessons. You can put them right into the presentations if you want the students to see them. My favorite part as a former high school teacher, what I would do after I taught the greatest lesson of the day, and I had a couple of students that were absent, I would come into here and rather than, this is that quick review math handbook, kind of like the Cliff's Notes, I wouldn't assign these to students to do because they need to take some responsibility for their own learning. But I would go to the 3 dots at the end and I would, this one's actually already on the calendar from a really earlier date, but I can go in and if I want to take this, take another look, if this is something that I taught today, I'm going to go to the 3 dots and I'm going to add it to the calendar for my students. And what that means is that over here on the side, when students log in on their dashboard, they'll see that this is a lesson material. An assignment you have to do, but a lesson material is here in case you need it. So it's a great tool to be able to have. Lastly, in terms of planning, I want you to see, and I know this is going fast. Remember, you're going to get the video so you can kind of slow this down and watch it. But once you build the presentation as you want, you put the pieces into that presentation that you want. If you teach maybe you teach Algebra 1 3 different times during the day, you don't have to build that presentation 3 different times. You simply build what you want, you go to the 3 dots, and you sync the presentation. Now, I'd only have one class in here, but let's say that you have first period, third class, and fourth class. You can actually sync that to all of your classes so that everybody gets the same presentation. So kind of one of those little pieces that is there. Whew. I've shown you lots, but I want to show you one more little part that's here because this has definitely changed since last year. This button on the side is assessments. This is where all of the pre-made things that McGraw Hill has resides in the assessments. Once you build an assessment, you can share with colleagues. Once you assign it to students to do, it shows up right here in your assignments tab. So whenever you want to build something, you're going to click right here underneath assessments. Under assessments, you always have a practice item bank. So this is Reveal Algebra 1 Module 1. And you can open up any one of these practice assignment banks. And just as a hint, if you click these downward buttons or upward buttons, it will put everything into an order that makes a little bit more sense. But all of our resources that are built into here, they are all in here in terms of having multiple kinds of pieces that go along with them. So remember, this is, and these are not tied to lesson numbers. At the middle school, it will say a lesson number. But at the high school level, because some people teach like an integrated curriculum, these won't have the lesson numbers that go along with them. So you're looking for the name of the lesson. This is the exact questions inside the book. And then again, the practice, reinforce, and reason and apply are subsets. But where I'm going to suggest you build your practice, your assignments for your students are from these 2 parts right here. Extra practice is where the questions that have the tutorial videos reside. Dynamic practice, this used to be kind of buried at the bottom of this, but these are the questions that are all algorithmic or that change values for your students. So you can always, if I open up this one on functions with the dynamic practice, look at how different this screen is going to look. Teacher said, can we possibly see all of the questions on the screen at one time? And so it's generating this, so it takes a little bit of extra time to do that, but you'll be able to see all of the questions without having to go straight into a preview mode for them. This is what it used to look like. In the old preview mode, you couldn't really see the question. You only got kind of the information. Now with our new assessment system here, or our new experience, you can actually see what those look like. So I'm going to do this really quickly because I know that I don't want to put 15 questions for homework. So I'm going to show you really quickly how to build the most perfect homework assignment ever. I'm going to click New Assessment, and I'm going to call this Shelley's International Homework. And I'm going to click Create Assessment. Then I'm going to click right here where it says Add Question, and I'm going to add an existing question. It's underneath Create New Question where you can see like the audio response, the other types of audio drawing and file upload, those kinds of things. But for now, I'm going to add an existing question, and I'm going to add it from the assessments. If you click here, it makes sense. We would think questions, but that is opening up the entire bank of questions, and then you have to sort through them. Watch how much easier we've made this. I'm going to click on assessments. I'm going to choose from my practice assessment bank. So I'll go into module 1 because I'm going to start the year with module 1. And I am going to select And if I want those questions that have the tutorial videos, I might choose to pull from some of my extra practice questions inside here, and I can preview those questions. And if I click on Show Question Details, if it has, see if I can find one quickly, see where this one says Learning Aids? That tells you there's a tutorial video. I'm adding that question to my assessment. Makes it really easy to do that. But instead, I also want to come in and I want to incorporate these dynamic practice questions. These are real, true game changer types of questions for our students. So if I want to put some questions on there, we're evaluating one-step algebraic equations and multi-step. Maybe I just want to focus in on those two types of questions. I add those to my assessment. So look at what I can see now. This is the question. I can see exactly how to work. I can see an example of that question. In this case, all students would see the same question, but it has a video. And then these are going to be my algorithmic questions. And again, I apologize, it's kind of a little bit slow popping up. But if I wanted, imagine there's the most perfect question here, and I wanted an extra question like that. For now, for the first time ever, you can actually click the copy button and it'll algorithmically generate another question that's similar to it. So if it would have a perfect little question that's here, and you'll be able to see hopefully when you build one of these. And now what you can do is, without having to go anywhere else, you simply click Settings and turn on the ability for students to see those tutorials, to get multiple chances. You can change the directions. You can turn on things like text to speech, a calculator, or even upload a reference sheet for your students. You click Save and Exit. And then from here, without going anywhere else, you can actually make this assignment directly to your students. If you're assigning homework, my last teacher tip I'm going to give to you is that you click this button to allow late submission. That way you don't have to reopen the assessment for your students. And then you're just going to click Assign. So what I will leave you with is have fun, kind of just playing with these. Anything that you've built is going to be in the My Assessments folder. So here's that international homework. I can click on the three dots at the end. I can send a copy to a colleague. I can print these, but please know the algorithmic questions, those are a digital only. So the algorithmic questions will not print, but the other questions will. And then I can also assign this to my students later on. So with that, I want to say you've got a variety of different types of questions you can use. You can navigate through. We've kind of shown what's there inside your presentations. Please know you also have some amazing questions for mathematical discourse for every single example. AL is a cautionary color orange. It's a question if your students can answer that, they're approaching a level of understanding. If they can answer what's in blue, they have an on-level understanding. And if they can answer what is in green, we call that a beyond level understanding. I call that color go green. So lots of good things are built into here. Lots of resources are built in. You have multiple forms of pre-made assessments that you can use and customize. And when your students do things online, you get whole class reports, you get individual student reports, and you can even track the national standards reports in there as well. So I know I'm 2 minutes over in time, but I want to say thank you so much for being here. I hope you have an amazing school year. If you have any questions, you can always, there's some great information, as Laura said, on the back to school information page that's there. If you had a question, I know I said I would stop, and Laura, I'm so sorry that I did not. But if you have a question that you need to get answered, I will stay on and I will answer your questions. Or we can also be sure that you will get those questions answered. So Laura, is there any burning question that I need to be sure that we show?
Well, we don't have any questions, but I think everyone would agree with me to say that you did share a lot of useful information. And yeah, I think a lot of people were like sharing with me privately that, oh, this is so interesting. I didn't know this. So thank you so much, Shelley. And we're not going anywhere. Even after the back to school season is over, do reach out to us if you do have any questions, or if you encounter any difficulty with the product, please do let us know. And again, I would like to say thank you, Shelley. Thank you so much for the session. And I hope everyone have a great day.